Hi, I'm John and welcome back to my Lair of Action Figures, where I'll be talking and reviewing action figures from different manufacturers. Continuing in the G.I. Joe Classified series, we're going to be having a look at Mad Marauders Sergeant Slaughter. He is number 129 in the line, and he was a general release in North America. Of course, he was only available from Hasbro Pulse for Europe, sadly, because we don't have the possibility to purchase most of those figures otherwise than from Hasbro Pulse. So this is a bit of a shame. Anyway, this figure goes for 42.99 euros in, of course, Europe. And this figure is sold for 34.99. We'll be having a closer look at that price a bit later on in the video. But, of course, we're going to be having a look at the box. Of course, we have Sergeant Slaughter with his Slaughter Marauder colors that he had. The space seams, of course, we have the figure on the other side of the box. Of course, we're not going to go into too much details about this box. Of course, everybody knows that I like the blister boxes more than the regular boxes, but as you can see, this is an interesting figure. Of course, this one came out in 2024. Now, we're going to be having a look at what we get in this box, what do I think about this figure, and do I think that it has a collectible value, and also the history. Of course, we need to go and dive into the history of the figure. So, of course, this is my mint in box version of Sergeant Slaughter, the Marauder version. So this one came out in 1989. Of course, this one is, as you can see, it was from Canada. I don't remember us going up to Canada, but when I'm looking at it, it looks like we may have gone to Canada to do some visiting with my parents. So, of course, something that is always missing with the G.I. Joe Classified series is a file card system. So this would have been nice to have it. So this is a bit the history of this figure. Of course, they did the sort of Marauders, and this is a repaint. So, of course, I think they did it also in the 25th anniversary line. They did some changes. There were some issues with Sergeant Slaughter due to the licensing, because he's a wrestling figure mostly, so he's known for his wrestling. So there was a bit some issues over there, and I think this is why we didn't see it in the 25th anniversary line of the G.I. Joe series. Yes, they did the Sergeant Slaughter, but not in these colors. We'll be talking about that figure when I be reviewing the regular version of this figure. Now, let's have a look at what we get in the box. Of course, we get our Sergeant Slaughter. We do get the little action figure. We get all the different hands that come with the figure, who is a pretty neat thing to have, because more hands is something that gives the possibility to do a lot of posing and gives a lot of possibilities on that behalf. So, of course, we have the whistle, we have his hat, then we have his baton, and then we have his glasses. And, of course, like the regular figure, he also came with an AK with the little sight on the side. We'll be having a closer look at this. But the Mad Marauders did come with some extra gear. Now, of course, we have already seen these weights with our friend Big Boa. So, of course, he also has, as you can see over here, the boxing gloves that go also with the figure. And not only that, we also get a duffel bag with this figure. Now, when I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, well, the regular version of Sergeant Slaughter costs $34.99. This one costs also $34.99. I'm like, wait a minute, we're getting more gear with this one. I would have loved to see the duffel bag with the original Sergeant Slaughter. That would have been a nice callback to the comic book. But I mean, Hasbro, you need to sort out something with your pricing, because if you can give me some extra accessories for the same price, you're trying to do a Super 7 move, and I'm not very agreeing about that. And I think it's a bit of a shame, because it's a bit of a wrong messaging. If you can give me extra accessories, this makes a bit something off on your pricing, and this tells me that you could give some extra accessories for the same price. So I know that it's a bit of a want, and I'm normally not into this kind of things, but I do think it's very interesting noticing that you can get extra accessories for exactly the same price, and this is a licensed character. I don't think that you're going to pay this licensing for this figure cheaper than the original version. Anyway, I'll be talking a bit more about that with the regular version because there's a bit more to dive into with the legalese around Sergeant Slaughter being a member of the WWE. Anyway, let's have a closer look at our figure over here. Of course, I haven't done my review for the regular version, but as you can see, they did just a basic repaint of the figure. Of course, it is a bit special if you don't like the colors of the Mad Marauders or Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders. It's something that you may not like. This is a nice little accessory that they give the figure of Sergeant Slaughter. Of course, you have the file card behind, but you can't read anything, and I think it's blah, 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 blah. You have the little sticker over here, who's the point that you cut out to receive free figures. Maybe Hasbro's going to be thinking about doing something. That would be really nice. So as we can continue with the original gear that you would have with the original figure, of course you have his baton, his whistle over here, you have his drill sergeant hat over here, who's pretty neat with the little paint applications over there. And of course we're going to be talking about the sunglasses, also in blue like the original Sergeant Slaughter. Of course there's something that they couldn't do compared to the original one. Over here, as you can see, he has the logo of the Marine Corps, and this is not possible anymore due to the fact that the United States Army have kind of put everything under license. So if you want to use their logos or any other images regarding their stuff, you need to pay them some royalties. I find it's a bit stupid, but we'll be talking about that in another video when I'll be reviewing Gung Ho, which is the best Gung Ho that came out, but that's going to be for another video. Anyway, let's get back into our Sergeant Slaughter. As you can see, you get a whole bunch of hands, and I really think this is pretty neat, having fist hands. So of course it makes logic, this kind of grab in the salute hand or karate chop hand. I mean, this is something really, really nice. Afterwards, the fact of getting an AK-47 is something that is a bit weird, but hey, why not? Of course, there's some parts that dismantle, like with the ones that are given with the Cobra. This comes out also a bit too easy for my likeness. Let's get into the weights over here. Don't remember if they also had the amounts on the weights with our friend Big Boa. I'm not don't remember that, but as you can see, you have the weights, and of course you have the boxing gloves. So I mean, this is really, really neat. And afterwards you have, of course, his duffel bag, who is a really nice little add-on to it. And like I said, this should have been given with the regular Sergeant Slaughter, would have made a lot of sense. So now that we had a look at this figure, I will be gearing him up, and I will be giving you my final thoughts, and do I think that this figure is a collectible figure or not. Now, for my final thoughts, and what do I think about this figure, of course, and do I think this is a collectible item. Now, very astonishingly, I don't think this has such a high value as a collectible item. The reason I'm saying that, it's not because I'm not a big fan of this blue colors, because let's be honest, the Sergeant Marauders did have some cool ideas, but putting this kind of blue on the figure makes it pretty ridiculous. Doesn't make it really camouflage. That means you stick out really pretty bad with a blue t-shirt, if we can say like that. So this is a pretty bad idea as a camo. But after all, the Mad Marauders did have some cool vehicles that I guess we won't be seeing anytime soon in 6-scale inch, due to the fact that they would be huge and way too big to make. Now, of course, this is something that you have to take into consideration. The fact that this figure also does not have much support, and we haven't heard anything else about the Mad Marauders. So again, I think there's a problem of communication. So I don't think this figure is going to be so much as a collectible, and to the point that I don't think this figure is such a collectible item. He's currently on sale on Amazon, and I think you can get him for $34. No, I think it was $27. I know he's under the suggest retail price. I don't remember exactly. So for my collector friends in America, you can go and pick him up for even cheaper with a lot more gear. So I really think it's a bit of a shame. If they would have had a better communication around the Mad Marauders, for me, it's a line that totally failed because of the fact of how they made these figures come out. There was not really a real thinking behind it. You had one figure came out, then no news, then we had some other ones coming out. It was a bit of a mix-max, and I think this is the reason why for this figure I don't think has a such value, collectible value. Of course, it is Sergeant Slaughter, and Sergeant Slaughter is not getting any younger, so I guess if he passes away, maybe this figure will rise up in price because of that. Now, let's talk about the note out of 10 and what do I think about this figure on my final thoughts. Now, I think it is pretty nice getting the duffel bag, getting all these extra accessories for this figure, and I think this is something that really works pretty well on his behalf. But I'm going to be a bit harsher on the note. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I like the fact that we're getting the gloves, all of this, but I'm not a fan of the paint schemes of these figures, and I didn't think that they were very good back in the day. So yeah, and I think there was also an issue with the plastic they used. I remember having some other ones of those Marauders, and those hands broke pretty easily. It looked like there was an issue with the plastic around making them. So as you can see, you can use the duffel bag because you don't have anything to fill it up. So you can gear it up like this, and you can have your sergeant ready to go into his training camp with his duffel bag over his shoulders. As you can see, it does look pretty neat and pretty good. So this is why I'm giving this figure a 7 out of 10 and not giving it any higher. I prefer the original version, but like I said, that's going to be talking about it in my other review. So that's going to be it for the review of Sergeant Slaughter Mad Marauder version. If you like this kind of video, please leave a like, share, comment in the section. If you have any suggestions, you can also put it in the comment section. Also, if you want to go and see some pictures, you can go and check out my Instagram page, Facebook page. The links will be in the description of this video. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!